Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Coast to Coast. This is your host, Joe Dellera, and I am joined by Andrew O'Connor Watts, NBA Watts, for you guys that have been following him. The guy is lock sharp, super sharp on his sides and his totals. Then I think we're going to mix in a couple props today, too. But Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. Little MLB Watts today, actually. Betting on the Giants and the Sox, my two favorite teams. It's looking okay right now, but yeah, kind of a funny time of year for NBA. But still been betting, still been doing well. It's been excited to get into the slate with you, man.
No, it's definitely been like a bit of a funky time in the NBA. And you can hear my son Luca in the background right now. Miss Rachel is, I guess, not occupying him enough. He needs to get in on Coast to Coast. But that being said, this time of the year is always funky, and one of the most sure bets in like the history of the NBA, LeBron James 10 plus points, almost didn't cash last night. He only had 2 going into halftime. Finished with 13, got that buzzer beater tip in at the end after talking all that smack on Pat McAfee's show. What do you think about LeBron? What do you think about the streak? Tell me what do you think about that bet just in general?
I mean, it's funny. It's one of those times where you're like, yeah, see, it's not such a lock after all. Maybe, if you were to bet 10 plus, I don't know what the actual odds would be. I mean, they'd be insane, right? You'd be laying like,
No, it's like
it
minus 5,000.
Yeah. So if you just bet that every day, you would be a profitable better, right? It seems like such a bad bet. And then games like last night are where you think, oh man, maybe that's the wrong, maybe that's mispriced. It almost didn't hit. And it's like, yeah, but it still did hit, right? The hit rate is still this, it still makes that profitable. So, you're really good about talking about kind of implied odds and how that kind of relates to some of these bets and really finding these angles of like, okay, like this is, you're really good at, the alts, for instance. This is kind of like the reverse alt. Like it's just like the ceiling is, or the floor is so high.
Yeah.
That you can just bet it forever.
Yeah, like Doris Burke said that she thinks LeBron's gonna get 10 plus every game until he retires, and I think honestly, like as long as he doesn't get hurt, like
Yeah.
LeBron is also a little bit of a showy guy. He knows, that this is a thing. He knows it's a record, like whatever. And I think he's never gonna get to a point where he's not one of the best players on the floor at all times. I don't think he's going to let himself get there. He's already played so long. I think he'll just retire at that point. There was a point during the game that he was, I think, like minus 400. It was about halftime. He was minus 400 to get there. That was basically the lowest. I was trying to get down on it, and it just kept like not letting me. So it was a little bit of a disaster there. But do you think that he's going to be able to do that? Like, do you think he's going to be able to do that for every game until he retires?
Yeah, I mean, he's like, you kind of mentioned it, like he's someone that cares about that stuff, right? So like even if he's like, let's say they're up by 20, like, let's say they're up by 20 with 5 minutes left, whatever. I mean, he's gonna play to a point to the point that he's getting that milestone. Like he's aware of it. He listens to the media, right? Like he's gonna make sure he gets to that milestone. So I think that's why it's such a sure bet. It's not just like in a void kind of bet. Like he's aware of it. He's trying to get to it. It's why, you talk about, you have certain like milestones that you like to bet, like 10, 20, 30, because you know that the guys are gunning for it to get that round number, right? And 10 and the streak being
absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's like definitely a point, right? Like this isn't, and this also like isn't a difficult line for anybody to hit. 10 points you can get in like less than a quarter. It's one thing like when we're doing like some of the triple double stuff and you're like, well, he's on a triple double streak. It's like, well, triple double's like not easy to get, like, or like a 30-point streak or something. Like those are much more difficult. Even double streaks, like the one Sabonis had. 10 plus points for a guy like LeBron who can score from everywhere. He's going to get a good whistle. It's very difficult to kind of stop that. And I think it's definitely something to watch. I think it's a fun bet. And it does seem that the best way to bet it has been on some of the exchanges because you can get your bets matched. You're not paying as much juice, like what have you. So definitely something to kind of look at. looking at obviously today, like you said, is Major League Baseball opening day, and we're getting some of the, I feel like some of these matchups are going under the radar to a degree, right? Do you think when let's put it this way, when there's a bigger slate, when there's more games on in like every sport, do you think that sometimes the lines can be like a little bit softer because like the news isn't reacting the same way, people's attentions are divided maybe? Do you think that that has any impact on what the betting market is? And I know this question is coming a little bit from the hip, so I'm hitting you.
That's all right.
No,
here. Yeah. Honestly, I don't. I'm not really. I don't know. In my opinion, like I've never done like research on it, or I haven't really like. I know that I feel, I think I do a little bit better when I have the time to go through the entire slate, like with a fine tooth comb. I think I do better on those days. So that would lead me to the assumption that the lines are a bit softer on these big slate days. Because I mean, even speaking from experience, like I don't always give it the attention. Like if there's a crazy, like massive slate, I've got stuff going on in my personal life. I'm not always just like, all right, like here we go, Wizards versus, Magic or whatever it is. Like I might be like, maybe an under, but we'll see. I kind of, I pick my spots a little more unless I have that like massive amount of time. So I would say that they are a little bit softer with absolutely nothing but anecdotal experience for that. So.
No, I think it just, a lot of it too is like it's a little bit easier to miss things in the news. Like if a player's in, a player's out, somebody's hurt, somebody's gonna be on a minutes restriction. It's just easier to miss because there are so many notifications hitting my phone today with like whether it's a home run, whether it's like whether somebody's in, somebody's out, somebody's getting upgraded, whatever the situation is. So definitely, something to kind of be cognizant of. But let's start looking into the slate here. And the first game that we've got is the Dallas Mavericks versus the Orlando Magic. And Orlando had, all right, well, both of these teams have kind of been a little bit of a dumpster fire recently. Orlando's a 6.5-point home favorite. Dallas, Anthony Davis, is presumably in at this point. I would imagine that he's going to be on a minutes restriction. And, Orlando has been kind of in and out, like performing well, having rough games. Lately. They've had some surprising wins lately. What do you think about this game? Which team do you want to back at this point?
Yeah, so I was looking at this game pretty long and hard, and I was all in on the Magic. I like the Magic minus 6.5. It was 7 earlier. Then we had Anthony Davis officially ruled in. Now it's 6.5. That was kind of, a halfway line, I think, given how little it moved. But I still lean pretty heavily to the Magic here. The problem is Dallas has been great with Anthony Davis. They're 2-0. It's obviously, without saying, a small sample size. But this game just means a little bit more to the Magic. So I do kind of like the idea of a, Magic covering the spread. They have been pretty good lately. They went through a pretty rough patch, but they're 5-2 in their last 7 games straight up, 6-1 against the spread. They've won and covered in 3 straight. I do think this is a good spot for Orlando, but AD is kind of a guy that does well against this Magic team, despite them being such a great defense. These bigger, more physical kind of shooting bigs. I think, it could be one of those where AD does really well and the Magic still cover, but it could also be, I think where AD's just kind of really feeling it. I think Orlando's the side here, but it's kind of a stay away for me at this point, the more I looked into it.
Yeah, I think if I was going to bet anything in this game, I'd be looking at Anthony Davis. I think that just like, I hate to kind of say you have to assume this, because if you look at, what he's been able to do, right? So he came back last game in Brooklyn. He still wound up playing. What is this? He played 27 minutes or so. I'd imagine he sees maybe like 30 minutes, right? It's a tough matchup, obviously, against Orlando, but at the same time, he has torched Orlando in, over the past couple of seasons whenever he's gotten the opportunity to play them. I think the other thing is they just need somebody that's good like to play basketball right now. And AD is still a pretty tough matchup for them. I would probably be looking at either like points or PR. I think I really don't know how many minutes he's going to get, but I just would imagine that he sees the lion's share of, kind of the workload. So I would look at, I think 27.5 PR is definitely a play that I would look at, and then kind of cross-referencing it with what we have at Rithmm. We're projecting overs on really all of these numbers. The issue is I think it's considered to be a caution spot, not in the sweet spot. And a large part of that has to do with the deviation from the projection to his prop. But I think it has to do with like some varying amounts of minutes that are either projected. And then also he's obviously still like returning from an injuries, but I would be looking at 27.5 PR. I think that's the spot that I want to back for Anthony Davis. And you can get that right now at -105 on DraftKings. Let's dive into the next game, because I know we've got a game between the Indiana Pacers and the Washington Wizards, the Washington Tank Commanders, right? What you had some thoughts that we were going to pick out at the beginning of the show, but I was like, let's restructure, let's bring it down here, because I know you have some thoughts on the Indiana Pacers, who are 13-point favorites in this game. Both of these teams, though, have been abysmal against the spread as of late.
Yeah, the Pacers are an interesting team. They are one that you want to back against good teams and you want to fade against bad teams. So they have been absolutely, like, I mean, at least in terms of ROI, they've been really great against these good teams on the money line. Let me bring it up here. We have, so against 500 or better teams, they're 18-13. 18-12 before LeBron's tip-in last night, but 18-13 on the season. And before that game, they were, I believe, 56% ROI on the season, 39% ROI going back to last season. So that's not really, it's not something that is just a this season trend. They get up for these big games, but they also, get down for the bad games, if that's a phrase, which it isn't. But so against teams of 400 or worse win percentage, they're 7-19-1 against the spread. Betting against them in these situations, 38% ROI this season. So, I'm looking at the Wizards kind of, but look, they're on a back-to-back as well. They are the Wizards, right? Like, who knows if they're even going to care about this game at all. They've been playing pretty well lately. I backed them last night, and that went well for me. I'm not going to test fate and bet the Wizards twice in a row, but what I am going to, this is almost like there is a Rithmm prop that I really like in this game, and it kind of plays into a potential Pacers blowout, but it also fits if this is a closer game. I like it regardless, and it's TJ McConnell over 7.5 points. Rithmm has this projected actually, shoot, I can't see that, but we have it, I believe, in the 9 range.
No, 9.4.
Thank you. 9.4. Perfect. Thought I wrote it down and I didn't. I realized I was like a road runner out on the cliff, just looking down at empty.
At nothing.
Got nothing. Yeah. So yeah, but look, Washington, part of the reason I don't want to back them is their defense is terrible. Third worst defensive efficiency in the league. They give up the most points in the league to opponents, and specifically against point guards. Washington is terrible. So point guards against Washington over in 12 of the last 15 games. Games that went under, the line was 12.5 and 15.5 twice. So these are like larger lines that the point guards are going under. And McConnell, not going to have to face Marcus Smart, who's out this game. He has, first of all, he has high usage against Washington specifically, 19 plus and 3 straight against Washington. I expect Indy to win, even though they're not great against the spread. There's no way, even if Wizards are kind of in it late, they're going to figure out a way to not win this game. And TJ's over in 70% of wins this season. That trend sticks when it comes to, so he's over in 70% of the last 10 games and on the season. So that also plays out when they win by 10 and when they win by 15 or more. So, and the reason that is he stays in. If they take out Halliburton, they let him run run the ball, run the offense when they're up big because he's the backup, right? So I think even if he gets big minutes and big usage, even when it's not a blowout. So I like it regardless of it's kind of almost script proof. So I'll take 7.5. I think it's too low.
Yeah, I like McConnell a lot. I always feel like he's just such a gritty type of player and does tend to get some of that more consistent run, like regardless of what is going on in Indiana. It's tough too because like honestly, like I like Halliburton like assists, double. I think that's good play in this game. I know that like there's always the concern about blowouts, and it's something that we're going to talk about in this game. We're going to talk about in the next game. I always think to a degree, like, yeah, you have to be concerned about a blowout. I think you also need to kind of remember, like, the game probably isn't a blowout unless certain guys perform. And
Right.
like Halliburton is somebody where, like, if he's not either scoring or dishing, it's probably not going to be a blowout. So there's going to be some sort of scenario there where there's success for Halliburton. So that would be where I was looking in this particular game. But the next game that we have, very high blowout probability. San Antonio Spurs versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Spurs have just kind of been in a little bit of a tailspin without Victor Wembanyama, De'Aaron Fox, and then you see the Cleveland Cavaliers have been excellent. But they did have that little blip recently. They had a 4-game losing streak. They don't have Evan Mobley today. Mobley's going to be sitting. What do you think about this game? Is there a player prop that you are targeting?
Yeah, I'm usually a sides guy, but there's a couple props tonight that I'm liking, which is why I'm glad I have you here. You're a great prop better. And I want you to talk me through this one because I was eyeing another Rithmm prop that we have, which is Jarrett Allen over 14.5 points.
Yeah.
Rithmm recommends it, projected at 16.9. But kind of that blowout potential that you mentioned is sort of what I'm hesitant about. I think if this does get out of hand, we could see Jarrett Allen pulled. He's over in 6 of the last 10 in 10 plus wins. So that's pretty good. But that evens out to 50-50 in 15 plus W's or in 15 plus wins when it kind of becomes Tristan Thompson time at that point, right? They'll pull him, let him rest a little. So there's a bunch of kind of, his usage goes up without Mobley. He's over this line in 7 of the last 10 without Mobley, 75% on the season. San Antonio's defense since Wemby's out, 27th in opponent points. He's over in all 6 meetings against the Spurs. And one of those was without Mobley, and he scored 29 points. So, but that was a 2-point game with Wemby in. So, what do you think of this? What should I pivot to, like a double where he just has to get a bunch of boards and get to 10? Should I what do you think?
So I will say, actually, these teams played back in December, these teams. They played the Wizards in a game back in December, and it was without Evan Mobley. And it was another game where Cleveland won pretty handily. But at the same time, Allen wound up playing decent chunk of minutes. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to see, I was like, how many minutes does he actually play in the fourth quarter without Evan Mobley? And basically he's played at least 5 in every game. There's games of 8, 5, 9, 9, 10, 8, and 12. So I'd have to go back through a little bit, and I'm going to try to do that while I'm talking. But basically his normal rotation, he comes in a little bit later on in the third quarter or in the fourth quarter. However, looking at this, when they played Orlando before, it was a little bit of it was still the same swing. So there was obviously a closer game, but essentially Allen's rotation is he comes into the game, plays about half the first quarter, sits until about midway through the second quarter, maybe a little bit earlier, like 8-minute mark, comes in, finishes the half. Then he comes in at the beginning of the third quarter, plays about 8 minutes, sits until about like the 8-minute mark in the fourth quarter. So you basically have to look at this and say he's averaging, give or take, like 29, 30 minutes a game. Do you feel comfortable betting him with a lower amount of minutes? Like, do you think he can clear this line in, say, like 23 minutes? And I think it's reasonable. I don't think it's completely unreasonable to expect that, especially because, again, if it's that type of blowout victory, he's going to have to be scoring without Evan Mobley in there. So I do like the prop. I would lean towards the over as well, and I think that Rithmm is predicting pretty significantly over this line as well.
Yeah. The other thing, I really that's great that you mentioned like the kind of substitution patterns, because that's really important. If they're up by a big, I think whether or not he comes in and plays those late game minutes is totally dependent on like what the score is, and there's a good chance that it is not close. So yeah, I have to be comfortable with that lower minutes. And honestly, last game I bet this in their last game, and he hit it in the fourth quarter. Like it literally took those 5 minutes that he plays like towards the end for him to get there. And it was a lower line. I think he ended with 15 or 14 on a 13.5 line. So that does make it a little bit sketchier. I still think he could just like catch these crazy lobs early. That game was no Donovan Mitchell. Yes, Mobley. But the thing that happens when that's the combination is that Darius Garland is running point, and what I almost did, and I wish I had, is bet Garland over assists, Allen over points in that scenario. If we do get that later, that is something I'm going to take in like in a game in the future.
Yeah, I think it's a good opportunity too, where like you can kind of assess. A lot of times they'll still give you unders depending on the score, like in that third quarter range, where you look at it and go, the game's kind of close. The thing is, the Cavs bench is still pretty good. Like the Cavs bench can blow games open. So you have to kind of look at it too and say, like, when Allen checks out, he basically isn't coming back in until some point in the fourth quarter. So if you have a bet and you're like, oh boy, like this is a little hairy right now, and you want to try to hedge out of it or whatever the situation is, that's always something to consider. But I do think substitution patterns are really, really important. But let's turn to the next game on the slate. We've got the Atlanta Hawks versus the Miami Heat. And this is a game that's actually surprisingly important. The Heat are 2-point home favorites. The Hawks are again against the spread darling here. But for me, this is an important game based on the standings, for the play-in, for the division even. But so the guy that I want to target Trae Young. I think that Trae Young is the person that you need to pick on the Atlanta Hawks in a game that's not only important for the standings, for making the play-in, maybe getting out of the play-in, but he's somebody that should see extended run. So he's been the primary engine of this Hawks offense, and I think he's going to get plenty of opportunity here against a Heat defense that has not been as good lately. And his assist prop is set at 10.5. He's exceeded this number in 6 of his last 10 games, and he's averaging 11.7 on the season. So he struggled against Miami historically in his career, but over the last 5 games against them, he's hit this number in 4 of them. So I think this game is going to be competitive. I think it's a good opportunity for him to dish and really kind of tear up this Miami like defense, where now they're playing a little bit of a drop with Khalil Ware. And I think it's just a great opportunity for Trae Young to go over 10.5 dimes.
Yeah, I like that one, man. I mean, the Hawks have been playing well, and that's been because of Trae, right? I mean, he's kind of he's the catalyst for them, right? He runs the offense. It's just entirely like up to him. If he is, if he's playing terribly, the Hawks are probably playing terribly. I was looking at this game pretty aggressively. In my soul, I want to bet the Hawks. I see Hayden on here. Do you like taking Hawks money line as well? There's a lot of reasons to like Hawks money line. I think that numbers and trends are kind of in favor of the Hawks here. They do really well when against poor transition defense teams, because they get out and run. That's their entire style. There's they also, I think, have just been a little bit undervalued since last season when they were so bad against the spread. I think the market has just been a little bit, slow to catch up to them this season. So I do like Atlanta, and like I said, I really wanted to take them. I wouldn't tell you not to. I'm not, because my projections are just like heavy on the Heat here. And my projections, my personal model has been doing really well lately, and I just don't want to go against it. So I'm just staying off this one. But I don't hate it, Hayden, if you want to go there.
Yeah.
I parlay with the Trae.
Yeah, I think it would probably be like a little bit of a correlated situation, but it's definitely it's going to be a tough game. It's actually probably going to be a pretty interesting game too to kind of keep an eye out on. Let's turn to the game that honestly I thought this game was going to be better, and then now we have a variety of different injuries. The spread is kind of ballooned, but we've got the Memphis Grizzlies versus the Oklahoma City Thunder, and it is a game where John Morant is not going to be playing. Jalen Williams is on the injury report. It does seem as if he's going to play, but it is definitely a little bit tougher to tell. Oklahoma City has just been wrecking teams lately. 9-1 against the spread. They're the first team in the league to get to, I think they're the first team in the league to get to 60 wins. And they've been awesome. But the Grizzlies are going to be without Brandon Clark out for the rest of the season. John Morant is out tonight as well. And when we look at Oklahoma City, Ousmane Deng is out. Hartenstein's available. Kason Wallace is questionable. Aaron Wiggins is out, and Jalen Williams is questionable. Do you have a feel on this game? Because I always think that Memphis is a team that I think would align decently well playing Oklahoma City, but they're obviously without Morant. What do you think about Morant's like impact on the spread? I always tend to think that he's a little bit overvalued against the spread.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I think he is overvalued on the spread. So yeah, I'm tempted again to my mind is telling me Memphis, but the numbers and the numbers are actually honestly telling me Memphis. My mind is kind of telling me OKC, to be honest. I they're just such a wagon. Memphis has kind of struggled lately. They covered their first game in a while against the Jazz. They covered against the Heat before that, but they lost straight up to the Clippers, to the Blazers, the Kings. They lost to the Jazz, they won but didn't cover against the Jazz earlier in the month. But they've just been kind of shaky in general. And if I am betting on Grizzlies, I need Jaren Jackson in there. It's not that I won't bet them because Jaw's out. I just don't need it,
Yeah. No, I feel you. I feel like Jaren Jackson is definitely I think he's the most important player in terms of what they can do on a nightly basis. I was looking at his points prop because his points prop is like popping in every single thing that I'm running. And my problem is he just doesn't hit it against Oklahoma City. He literally has hit this twice in whatever this is, like 11 games against Oklahoma City, and he hasn't hit it in 7 straight games. So it was a spot that I was considering, but given that head-to-head history, I was like, I can't really pull the trigger here. I will say, if Jalen Williams is out, I think it looks like he's trending towards playing in this spot. But if Jalen Williams is out, you just always have to look at Shea and his points prop. I know it sounds like a little insane, like when you see these 32.5, 33.5 props, but the numbers that he puts up without Jalen Williams are preposterous. It's just the usage just is nonstop. And I think that's really important. And then honestly, Chet's rebounding has been really good lately. He's at 8.5 today. It's plus money. I don't think there are any 7.5s there's one 7.5 in the market, but that's at Prize Picks. So I don't have that. Not totally sure how that works for people, but I think that Chet's rebound prop is something you could take a look at as well, if you wanted a little bit of action in this game. Let's turn to this rematch actually from about a week ago between the Lakers and the Chicago Bulls. So the last game was an absolute barn burner here. The Bulls really took care of business. They whipped the Lakers. Lakers are 4-point road favorites. Chicago is 9-1 against the spread over their last 10 games. Just been unbelievable. Number one, what did you think about that game? Because the Lakers just got their asses handed to them by Chicago.
It was awesome, man. That was a cool game. Kobe White is so fun. He's like just he's one of those guys that like it never feels great betting on the Bulls, but then like I remember I was betting them a lot last year, which was probably a bad idea, but there'd be these games where like I'd be on them and I just they'd be down like 20 immediately, and you're just like, God damn, dude, what am I like? And you're just like, okay, that ripping up your ticket, and then like fourth quarter, Kobe White just like drops 14 and the other team just has no answer for him. So love Kobe White, huge fan. I really want to bet the Bulls again here, and I almost wish that they hadn't won by so much, because part of me thinks that, like, Lakers on a back-to-back, I would have expected LeBron to sit. He's not sitting. He's playing, which makes me think that they're like, let's fucking beat these guys, right?
Yeah.
So I still think you could take 4 and not be, in total, be a bummer. But I would almost lean just take money line with the Bulls, because I actually think it's kind of a bad matchup for the Lakers. They're a little older, like they're not the most like run and gun kind of team, and the Bulls are fast and they just like run you into the ground. So I kind of taking, I wish it was a little longer for money line, but that would kind of be my bet, is just bet on the money line, all kind of like, or even like minus, maybe that's the move. Maybe bet like -2.5 or 3.5 or something. Get like a real juicy number, because I think they either just like blow them. Might be like a blowout either way.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious to see how this game kind of goes. One of the things that's been a little surprising to me has been actually like Dalton Connect's minutes have just completely evaporated. Last 3 games he's barely played. I have like his props are standing out to me today. He's at like 6.5 points. I probably would just pivot to 2 threes, I think, instead if I was gonna do a connect prop, but that was definitely something that stood out. On the flip side, though, I do have one prop for the Chicago Bulls, and I like Josh Giddey over 8.5 assists. He almost had a quadruple double last time out. Like it was insane. So just unbelievable performance from Giddey against the Lakers. And they also shot 46% from 3. So you figure even a little bit of that should regress, but I do think that we can expect a certain level of like him to be able to kind of continue to do this, right? He had 17 dimes on 24 potentials in that game. And over the last 7 games, the Lakers are now the number 1 in terms of an assist matchup for guards over the last 7 games in the NBA. They're just surrendering assists at an alarming rate, because this defensive regression that they're undergoing is significant. It's gotten to a point where it's like, hey, well, you remember the defense we were doing before? You have to still hustle. Like it doesn't just carry over. Like you have to put in the work. And I think that was a thing that they were doing at first, and they haven't really been doing as much lately. So Giddey's hit this in 6 of his last 10 games. I like him to do so again today. I think this is going to be a good spot again for him to dish out some dimes. The next game we have is the Rockets versus the Utah Jazz, and the Rockets are pretty significant favorites. The Jazz are running a clinic on player development right now. They are just entirely focused on next season. Looking at this game between the Rockets and the Jazz, we do have a pretty significant spread here. The Rockets are 13-point favorites. Neither of these teams have been good against the spread, which is interesting because a lot of times I feel like these teams that are tanking are a little bit better at covering the number than people expect, just because nobody wants to bet on them. But Utah is still somehow 4-6 against the spread over their last 10. Do you have any thoughts on this game, or should we just kind of push on to one of the games that actually has a little bit more playoff implications?
Yeah, I don't really have anything in this. Houston should win, but
yeah,
I don't want to lay it. So
that game's pretty gross. Okay, so let's turn. This game is actually pretty significant. We have the Portland Trailblazers versus the Sacramento Kings, and the reason this game is interesting is the Kings are actually in 9th now in the play-in. They've slipped a bit. Portland has continued to slide. They're in 12th. They're 3 losses back of the Suns, who are in 10th, and 4 losses back of the Kings. It's unlikely that Portland is going to be able to pull off that 55-1 play-in ticket that I have for them, but it is possible that they can disrupt this enough where Sacramento maybe falls out of this, and Dallas and Phoenix are both able to slide up. Looking at this game, do you think that Portland is going to be able to hang with the Sacramento Kings?
So glad you asked, Joe. I do.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, I'd love to. I think this is, for me, I think 6 is too many points for this Sacramento team that has been kind of shitty, for lack of a better word. They've been there. This is a worse rest spot for them. 3rd and 4, 4th and 6. They did lose last game against the Blazers. They've lost the last 2 actually, both this season. And then they won the first game, so they're 1-2. This Sacramento is against the Blazers, but they're 2-1 against the spread. They didn't even cover in the game they did win. They pushed. But I don't really, you could say revenge angle, losing twice. There's some of that, but I just don't really care about a revenge angle for a team that's playing terribly, right? I mean, Levine, I think it was talked about how bad the vibes were in the locker room. And guess what? Like, if the vibes are bad now, when like they literally played together in Chicago, like, I mean, obviously there are other guys on the team, but it's just crazy to me. I'm still baffled by the Sacramento Kings doing that, but
just the entire thing. Yeah.
It's so weird. But yeah, here's the thing. I mean, both teams haven't been amazing lately against the spread and in general, but I trust Portland a lot more. They're still in the last 2 weeks. They're 6th in spread differential, which is a great stat over on Cleaning the Glass. Basically, like how much, it's basically like net rating, but against the spread. So how much did you cover by or, not cover by? And it's the difference in that. So, but if we take out the last 2 games, which they did lose and not cover in, but that was against Cleveland and Boston for Portland. If even with those losses, they've covered and won 5 of the last 8 games. So they lost 2 straight, like I said, but I still think they've generally been playing better. Sacramento is the 2nd worst home team against the spread at 13, 22, and 2. The only team worse, I believe, is the Philadelphia 76ers. So, and if we look at the last 2 weeks as well, they're 29th in spread differential. This is kind of just like take the better against the spread team against a bad against the spread team, and I'm getting 6 points. Like, I'll take that all day. This is also a range for both teams that is inversely, positive and negative. So when the Blazers are a dog of 2.5 to 7, they're 13-9 against the spread. When Sac is a favorite of 2.5 to 7, they're 7, 13, and 3 against the spread. I'll take the Portland Trail Blazers +6.
Yeah, and additionally too, for this kind of trend with the rest disadvantages, Sacramento is one of the worst in the league against the spread. They're 4-14 against the spread with the rest disadvantage. So looking at the schedule spots, kind of taking that all into consideration, you have to say this is a rest disadvantage spot for Sacramento, and they're 4-14 against the spread. So like the look there, and it's been interesting to see Sacramento because they, Sabonis has come back. It hasn't necessarily translated in the way that I think people thought it would. And now you have a tough matchup against a pretty competitive Portland team at home. So let's recap these bets and then get everybody out of here unless there's any questions left for us. But I'm on Anthony Davis over 27.5 PR, Trae Young over 10.5 assists, and Josh Giddey over 8.5 assists. Fill us in on yours, Andrew.
Yeah, I'm on TJ McConnell over 7.5 points. I am going to stay away from the Jared Allen prop. That is not going to be an official play, but Portland +6. And honestly, I'm kind of think I'm talking myself into OKC -10.5. I'll go ahead and make that official. OKC -10.5.
I think that line has a little bit of a chance to move if J-Dub is in or if he's out. Either way, I think that you're probably not seeing it move too much. I think I'd imagine it's a little bit of a hedge right now. Maybe it goes to like -11.5 or -9.5, something like that. But we love the picks. It's going to be a good day for everybody out here. I don't see any questions, so we will move on. There's plenty of games on for you guys to enjoy today. Be sure to sign up for Rithmm, get that free week, check out our bios, and test it out. I know we've been crushing on the tournament. My bracket has been doing exceptionally well. Actually, I'm hitting all these matchups that I didn't think I was going to get, and and it's been awesome. So definitely use it, especially with all the new sports kind of popping up as the seasons come in. It's going to really help you find a lot more value and, bet kind of more within your means because you're going to be betting with projections, some analysis as well. So now we've got Now we do have a question here, and it says, do you guys see all the emojis flying across the screen? I don't. We haven't seen the emojis flying across the screen, but it is good to know that people are tuning in and enjoying the play. So I could probably, I don't know if I could watch this on mute, honestly, but I'm glad that somebody can. so that's great. But look, for Andrew O'Connor Watts, I'm Joe Dellera, and thank you for joining us for this episode of Coast to Coast.